Hello, my name is Stephen Lindenmeyer, and welcome back to another video demonstration of my game project, Guards and Grunts. So this playtest was meant to test a simple arena map and game mode, as well as jungle camp AI, the lane troop AI, jungle buffs, and NPC damage and health scaling. I got a lot of my friends to get on board for a 3v3, and it was really fun. In the shop menu, I have expanded the consumables so that there is now a speed potion and a mana potion, because there was space for it. There currently is no use for mana in the game, but I had the assets for it, so I decided might as well make a mana potion and put it on there. So for this version of the build, I really wanted to go all out with the player feedback. I added a hit effect that gets attached to the character's chest whenever they take damage. So, your player swings, it hits them, it deals damage, and there's a little spark effect, and you just know they took damage, they're the one that got damaged, and you know exactly when they got damaged. And you can also tell when you are taking damage, and if there's a lot of sparks around you, you should probably get out of the way. I also made it so that when the spawn gates are open, or troops are spawned, or whenever any global effect happens, they can send a message to everybody in the game and let them know, hey, this has just happened. In this map and game mode, there is 2 side jungles, with one of them opening after 5 minutes and holding the damage camp, and 2 lane spawners for each team that converge in the middle and sort of force the players to keep fighting in the middle of the map. In this build, I made it so that whenever any character initiates their swing with their weapon, they lose about a quarter of their movement speed, so they slow down, and it's a lot harder for somebody to stick to someone as they're trying to run away. Here you can see I'm taking out the regen camp, and once I kill the goblin leader and pick up the regen buff, you'll see me gain a bunch of health per second. Really, this playtest was just heaps of fun. It was so fun playing a game with my friends and for them to all have fun with it. It was great having team fights, and it was great leveling up organically, choosing where to put my points, and everybody, choosing their weapons and leveling up and getting stronger. But there was still the issue of the combat being ultimately pretty boring. There's no abilities, there's no classes, everybody's the same class practically. And yeah, it was just a little bland, but it was great actually having a game that we could play. In this build, I added the ability to double-click items in the shop in order to buy them. And this is a great quality of life change that makes it way easier to get items from the shop. Now, before I could confidently do a playtest on this map, I wanted to make sure there was some form of spawn protection. And on the orange and blue checkerboard pattern in either player's spawn, any character standing on it will either be healed or damaged, depending on what team they're on. And of course, at the 5-minute mark, you can see there's some pretty buggy doors that open up, and a message enters the chat box saying the boss gates are now open. And there is one enemy in there at this point, and he has a damage buff. But of course, the enemy team took it really quickly. Here you can see I'm trying to kill some jungle creeps with my teammate, and as you can tell, it's 7 minutes into the match, and the jungle creeps are really strong. They have since been toned down. In fact, I cut their scaling in half since this build, but really it was just an uphill battle. And the worst part was they had no maximum aggro distance, so they could follow you all the way to spawn. And this was kind of how we ended up killing the creeps in this build. Just bringing them all the way back and dipping out to kill one and then healing and going back out. And yeah, I had to change that immediately. Now, the absolute worst bug that affected this playtest was one regarding respawning. I added a respawn delay, basically 5 seconds plus 1 second for every minute of the match, and I forgot to add a delay for which the player character deletes itself after dying and starting the ragdoll animation. So basically, if you died after 9 minutes, you could never respawn, and that really sucked. So this next playtest was meant to test NPC scaling and player scaling, as well as health bars above the NPCs' heads. And it was pretty okay. I also added this functionality where whenever a player would take damage, their move speed would be reduced based on however much damage they've taken, and of course that move speed would get reset after a few seconds of not taking damage. But there were a good few issues with it. There's always this issue between move speed changing during runtime in a network situation, where the server will have one version of the player's move speed, and the player's going to have their own version of their own move speed. And if they're different at all, it's going to cause stuttering and just a bunch of issues, because the client is saying they're going this fast and the server is overriding their position like every single second, and so it just leads to stuttering, and it was very annoying, this playtest. You saw the doors were actually opening pretty smoothly and not teleporting. I also improved the ones at the boss doors so they don't like float or whatever they did in the last playtest. But as you can see, there's the NPC health bars, and they don't really work for the clients. I have since fixed them. They work perfectly fine now, but in this playtest, it was only working for the host, because the host was able to see the health bars because the host can see every single character in that world and is already loading it and processing it, calculating what they're supposed to be doing. But the clients only set up the health bar if that NPC is rendered in their world when they're spawned in. So, there's some NPCs that have health bars working, but otherwise it is just like a gray bar. Another thing I added in this playtest was max aggro radiuses for the jungle creeps and the lane troops, where you can see some of the lane troops end up ignoring the enemy player and going back to their patrol. And it has some forgiveness, where before they go back, they'll check to see if the player is close enough for them to care, but otherwise they will just go back to their patrol. And jungle creeps have pretty much the same thing, but once they reach the end of their aggro radius, they will just ignore the player and run right back to their spawn point. Here you can kind of see the issue I explained earlier, where taking damage and swinging your weapon and a lot of things happening on the server side can potentially just mess up the calculations and have a mismatch of move speed between the server and the client. So this next playtest was meant to test NPC scaling, as well as the improved NPC health bars, and some new weapons, some new arena functionality, and it was really fun. I changed some of the races so that one team gets humans, high elves, and dwarves, and the other team gets orcs, wood elves, and cyclopses. And it's a lot closer to how I want it to actually be. I've been talking with a game writer for a while now in order to come up with a world and the races and just the general story of the game. It's not necessarily going to be a story-driven game, but it will have some setting that's going to be utilized. Now immediately I open up the scoreboard because it has been improved. Not only does it show your name and your level, your kills and your deaths, but it also shows the amount of damage you've done, as well as the weapons you have equipped. Here you can see the NPC health bars have been improved drastically in the fact that they actually work for a client, and it just makes it way easier to get the last hits on enemies and to see at a glimpse how much HP an enemy has. Here, once again, you can see that move speed bug I was talking about earlier. But besides those bugs, this playtest went really well in the fact that everybody could see the health bars above the NPCs, and all of the buffs and their special effects were being shown to every other player in the game. Where you can see pretty soon here, my teammate has the regen buff and I have the haste buff, and we can both see them. Here you can see me go into the boss arena with the damage buff, and at this point in the build, I had it where there's 3 enemies in the boss arena, but practically there's only 2 of them, because there's one enemy that's neutral, one enemy that's from Team B, and another that's from Team A. And so any one team can only kill 2 enemies in that area, so there's some protected farm. And I have the same sort of system with the haste camps, where the haste camp closest to either team is aligned with the enemy team. So practically, your team can easily take the haste camp closest to them, because the enemy team has no chance of stealing it. I did not make it that way for the regen camps on the edge of the jungle. so that they can potentially be stolen. Some farm can be taken away from your opponents, and you can potentially snowball. At this point in the playtest, just about everybody had a bow equipped because I added 4 new weapons. 3 of them were rare items and had special effects, and 2 of those rare items were bows. So we all wanted to try them out and make sure that they were cool, that they were balanced, that they were fun to use. And yeah, you can see us farming there. But I have the High Elf Bow, which increases the physical crit bonus from 2 times to 2.5 times. You know, really double dipping on the builds that want to go all in on dexterity. You know, the builds that want to rely on dodging and critting in order to have more damage output. And on the other token, I have the Orcish Bow, which is the first stacking item in the game, where it has pretty mediocre damage per second, but after you do 500 damage to anything, you gain a stack, and for each stack, you gain 1 weapon damage up to plus 15. So you end up dealing more damage than the High Elf Bow could do per shot. And it was really fun having some bows to build into, because for the longest time, there was only just one. And while I'm dead here, you can see me open up the scoreboard, and it works really, really well, all except for the damage dealt, which isn't being replicated in this build, and that's just a visual bug, because the server knows exactly how much damage you've dealt, and you know exactly how much damage you dealt, but everybody else in the server just has no idea. So it's only a visual bug and does not affect any mechanics. But that is practically everything notable from this build. It went really, really well, all except for the move speed bug and also the game over screen working for everybody except me. I appreciate you watching the video this far, and I hope you're excited to see this become a finished game. Obviously, the game is far from pretty, but it is a great excuse to challenge my knowledge of the Unreal Engine and learn new things while I work on a game I'm passionate about. You see, in November of 2023, I earned my bachelor's degree in game design, and almost immediately started working on this game. And although I was taught a lot of techniques and philosophies that helped me design this game, I was only really taught how to design a single-player game like Uncharted. So, I taught myself how to program a multiplayer game using documentation, tutorials, and forum posts. Everything you've seen in these playtests were either handmade by me or legally acquired for free using the internet. But that's kind of what I can do in a year. I took week-long breaks to take care of life's obstacles, so imagine what I could do if this was my job. So if you are hiring, please be sure to send me an email. I'll respond as soon as I can. Thank you.